Hello, Exabu here. Today we've got a big variety of choices, we've got a big campaign and big missions with big difficulty. Today we're gonna talk about Big Baba Barbarossa in Panzer Corps 2, which offers 3 paths towards Moscow, each offering 3 missions towards the capital of the Soviet Union. Which path to take? Which one is easier? Which is more interesting? There is so much to discuss, so without much ado, without many introductions, let's get right to it. So as you can see, we're presented with 3 initial missions, Barbarossa North, Barbarossa South, and Barbarossa Center, each of which leads to a second mission. Barbarossa North leads to Leningrad, and Barbarossa Center and South lead to different versions of Kiev. We'll discuss the differences. And then South leads to Rostov, and Leningrad and Center leads to at the gates of Moscow. And all of them finally end up in Moscow. We're not going to discuss Moscow today, but all of those other things, let's look at them. So, let's start with Barbarossa South, and this is, of the 3 paths and of the 3 Barbarossa missions, this is the tankiest one, the most blitzkriegi. This is where I'd like to introduce what I call the nest formation, which is essentially an AT gun or a 15cm artillery piece, which is surrounded by tanks and which is slowly advancing towards the enemy. The Romans would call it testudo, but this is a defensive, semi-defensive, semi-offensive formation. But why should you use it, you ask? Because Barbarossa South is a representation of the Battle of Dubno, which is the biggest tank battle which you've never heard about. Look it up on Wikipedia, it's huge. There were like 4,000 tanks in there, and it's all gonna happen in between Kovel, Lvov, Vinnytsia, and Zhytomyr. You're gonna have serious, really powerful enemy counterattacks, nothing you've seen in France or Poland, not even close. You're gonna see T-34s, you're gonna see T-26s and BT-7s, which in this game are not pushovers, so do form these nested formations in the north. In the south, you've got these Romanian troops, and you've got a few deployment slots, so you should definitely use the group around Yasi, and you should advance towards Tigina. You're gonna mostly have to counter infantry, so focus on those kinds of troops, get Panzer 4s instead of 3s. These southern troops are pretty much capable of taking Tigina and Balta, so that your troops in the north can focus on destroying that tank armada and advancing towards Zhytomyr and Vinnytsia. This is a reasonably easy mission, it's a short one, and this is what you'll see in the south in general. So let me just mention a little trick to make your life easier, maybe not spend too many core slots on your air force. If you take enemy airfields on turn 1, the ones which have enemy planes around them, if you take them on turn 1, the enemy planes will be destroyed on turn 2 immediately. I highly recommend you to take the airfield next to Kovel and the one west of Lvov. You can technically take the one right next to Lvov, but it's kind of difficult and generally not worth it. You can pretty easily kill those 2 air units next to it, but in Kovel and Przemysl, you can do it pretty easily and it's worth it, and you don't have to field as many fighter planes, or any fighter planes for that matter, if you're using Bf-110s, which I highly recommend. Next up, Barbarossa Center, which I believe to be the easiest mission of the 3. But let's first discuss the Brest and the Kaliningrad situation. I've seen people asking about Brest and whether you should take it, and I believe, aside from the obvious titty references, I believe that you shouldn't. It's a pretty difficult objective, it's not required by any means, the briefing is really misleading you, it's kind of a secondary objective, but it's not. It's just 100 prestige for you and nothing more. Kaliningrad is extremely expensive, takes up many slots. It takes up 7 slots, which is a 10th of your core slots reserve which you can have. In my opinion, it's really unreasonable to have that unit in your core force at this point. There are people who have the prestige and are buying it for later when the core slots are many, and 7 core slots is not much. But at this point, I personally didn't have enough prestige to go around, so I decided against it. It's up to you. Karl Gerät is not required for this mission, and taking Brest is too much of a hassle for just 100 prestige, so forget about it. Besides that, this mission is extremely easy, and you can repeat the airfield trick I've talked about in Barbarossa South. There are 3 airfields with enemy planes on turn 1. You can easily take the one near Grodno and the one near Brest. The one in Bialystok is very difficult to access, so probably avoid that one. Plus, it just has 1 fighter in there, so don't bother. Besides that, you're gonna have a very slight counterattack near Brest. There are a few tanks there, and then you can pretty freely advance towards Minsk. There will be very little resistance. Just past Minsk, there will be a little tank counterattack with one of the weaker tanks plus a T-34 and a T-28 in the south, and as soon as you deal with them, you're pretty much done with the mission. All of the rest of the defenses are static and pretty weak. You just need to advance, bring your infantry, bring your artillery, surround Smolensk, and get on to the next mission. And finally, Barbarossa North, by far the most difficult mission of the 3. Why, do you ask? Because we get KV-1 tanks here. Yes, among other things. So you're advancing through Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia towards the north of Russia, and the problems here are 3. First of all, you get a pretty nasty counterattack just north of Kaunas. As I said, you're gonna get KV-1s, 2 KV-1 units, among other tanks. So just use your nested formation. You might buy the Sture Emil AT gun. It might be useful for this. Use everything to kill off those KVs. But your main advance should go through Kaunas. It's reasonably easy to take. It doesn't look crazy. Then proceed towards Daugavpils. And here's where you'll see the other difficulty of this mission is that there are no easy river crossings here. It's all marshes between the cities. So Daugavpils is the only reasonably easy city to take before you cross the river. After that, you'll encounter the third problem with this mission, and it's the distances. You will not see much resistance, except for the area around Pskov, especially Opochka. Those fortifications, you should probably avoid them. It's not worth it, it's just 50 prestige, so go around it, they're static. But otherwise, the distances are pretty long. It's a long way to Tallinn, it's a long way to Riga, it's a long way to Pskov. So you'll have to scatter your forces, and you'll have to find solution on a case-by-case basis. So after Daugavpils, go west to Riga and Yekapils, go east towards Pskov, and go north towards Tallinn. Tallinn is probably the most tanky one. Pskov, you'll have to cross the river for it and use your pioneers for that. And that's Barbarossa North. Let's proceed to Leningrad. But first, let's do Kiev, and this is the mission you get after Barbarossa Center and Barbarossa South, and it's the same exact mission in both cases, except for the initial positioning of your troops. So for Barbarossa South, you get your troops in the south, your core force in the south, and auxiliaries in the north, and with Barbarossa Center, you get your core force in the north and auxiliaries in the south. In terms of the enemies, it's exactly the same mission. So, we've got an interesting objective here, 88 units to kill, and sounds like a lot of fun until I tell you that there are exactly 88 enemy units on this map, such as the ones in Poltava and Sumy, which are reasonably difficult to reach, and so you have to try to manage your time pretty efficiently, especially in the south. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What else do you have to do? You have to encircle Kiev, repeating history, because Kiev is full of pretty nasty Soviet troops like heavy infantry and engineers, so you absolutely have to encircle Kiev, let them stew in there and gain suppression, and only then kill them off. And there are like 15 units in there, so that's a big chunk of the AC-8. There are two big enemy counterattacks in this scenario. One just east of Kiev with a couple of KV-2 tanks and a T-34 and a few lesser tanks, so this is a really difficult place to get through, so use your nested formations. That's very important. Just remember this for the rest of the campaign. Nested formations, that's your medicine against tank counterattacks. Plus, there will be a small counterattack near Konotop with one KV-1 and a T-34. Apart from that, most of the enemies are pretty much static, and you'll have to crack some of the defensive positions there. Now, on to the differences between North and South. Right away, I have to say that I believe that North is easier. First of all, because you get better auxiliaries. You've got decent infantry around Kiev, essentially half encircling it, so it's much easier to encircle Kiev in the north. And you've got a decent group of units in the south next to Kremenchuk. You can use it pretty successfully to advance there. Plus, it's very easy to clear the north of the map. With the north, what you should do is advance through Chernigov with most of your tanks, use your infantry and maybe infantry tanks and artillery to clear the north, and then advance towards Konotop. And southwards, your best tanks and your AT guns should advance through Chernigov and face that big tank counterattack next to Kiev, and then complete the encirclement of the city. With the south, the problem is that you're pretty much thrown into the heat of battle right away. With north, you have some time to form your troops, produce your formations. It's reasonably, you have enough time to do that. In the south, as soon as you cross the Dnieper River, you're gonna be at counterattack almost immediately. Don't fall into the temptation to set up bridging units right next to Kiev and trying to cross there. You'll be attacked heavily, you will be bombed heavily there. Go through Kremenchuk, set up a bridging units there, try your luck there, and pretty much advance from Kremenchuk towards Kiev with your best tanks. In the north, once again, the southern version of the mission is somewhat more difficult in the north because you get worse units in the north and you have to cover quite a lot of ground there. And this is how you take Kiev. This is one of the more difficult missions in this group, in this series, so persevere and preferably take north. So, Leningrad! This mission may look really daunting the first time you see it. What's with the huge city up in north? Know that it's got a supply hex in the middle, you can't encircle it. And this incredible defensive belt around it, which is probably the most difficult part about this mission actually. But besides the horrifying looks, I believe that once you know what you're doing, it's easier than Kiev. First of all, unit placement. I believe that you shouldn't worry about the north, just blockade that bridge so that nobody comes from Kingisepp. More on that later. Focus your forces on the center and south, because on turn 2 there will be a counterattack. In the north, BT-7 will try to take Narva, so leave a tank there. And on the south, there will be a pretty big tank force attacking from Demyansk. There will be a KV-1, a KV-2, so is it time for a nested formation? Absolutely. So in this case, it's pretty easy because the area where tanks can pass through easily is pretty narrow, so just kill them off, but don't advance into Demyansk, don't go into that area, you'll waste your time. It's just 200 prestige. If you have enough time, please do, but otherwise don't bother. What you should do, and what I should comment about the briefing to this mission, is that it's misleading you once again. It's talking about these small cities around Leningrad, like Volkhov, Chudovo, and Novgorod, and how you should take all of them first, and you absolutely shouldn't. Especially Chudovo and Volkhov, because they will distract you. They're pretty easy to take, but they will distract you if you go there first. So the battle plan for Leningrad is, once you've dealt with the tank counterattacks, take Luga, take Novgorod. Don't expect any kind of stray units trying to retake these objectives. It's really easy past that point. What you should do next is form a big group of units, artillery, pioneers, recons, and to a lesser degree tanks, just south of the fortifications around Leningrad, because at this point you will have to clear all of them. This is the hardest bit, but it's not difficult. There aren't any surprises here. It's just a grueling slog advancing through these trenches and bunkers and everything. Once you have cleared all of those trenches, Leningrad is ripe for taking. It will still take time, but at this point you can send tanks to Volkhov and Chudovo, send one tank, maybe one infantry, and one artillery, and a few planes, and you'll take them easily. There's just infantry in there. It's not well fortified, it's not powerful, so just take them. And slowly but steadily advance through Leningrad, bombard it to hell, and destroy the bleeding light cruiser in the Gulf of Finland. Take Kingisepp and just clear Leningrad. That's how you do it, and I love this mission. It's a bit slow, it's methodical, there are no surprises, and once you know the strategy, you can comfortably follow it. You could say that it's been dark and stormy in Barbarossa by this point, but now it's suddenly quick and breezy in Rostov. So, this mission is absolutely the easiest of all the 7 I'm looking at today. It's just a big tanky blitzkrieg party riding towards the east. This is pretty much a rendition of the first Battle of Kharkov, and as soon as you learn the nesting formations, it'll be super easy. There will be a little counterattack in the beginning, both in Kharkov and south of it, near Stalino and Mariupol. So don't advance too far, form the nested formations immediately, and weather the storm, and just attack. Use your tanks to advance past Stalino towards Rostov. Don't storm anything, just encircle everything, let them stew, and let your infantry and artillery take Kharkov and Belgrade first, and then come to Stalino, Mariupol, and ultimately Rostov to take all of it, to just storm them and destroy all the infantry sitting inside. Rostov is the only objective past Kharkov that takes any concerted effort. Just wait for your infantry. This is a really quick mission. It's only 20 turns originally, for me it was 15, and I still haven't had any problems taking it, so go ahead. Congratulations, you are at the gates of Moscow. Pleasantries aside, unfortunately there's little to congratulate here about, because this is the biggest map of all of the scenarios we're looking at today, and it's quite challenging. I believe that Kiev South might be more difficult, but this is a grueling affair trying to breach through these defenses. But there are a few tips that I can provide you with to make it, if not easy, at least tolerable. If you know what you're doing, this mission isn't too long. I've managed to finish it on turn 21. While you might sustain quite a lot of losses, you will still be able to finish this mission early pretty quickly. So, grouping. You've got 3 main deployment areas in this mission, in the north, in the center, and the south. The center and the south should be pretty tank heavy. You will have to form nested formations there. The north, focus on infantry, artillery, and infantry tanks, i.e. Panzer Fs. Plus near Rostov, i.e. in the center, you should have some infantry as well. So why many tanks in the center and the south? Because you will face enemy tank counterattacks primarily with T-34s. There are about 4 units of T-34 on this map, and 1 KV-1 also, and a bunch of T-50s, which are nasty as well. So one of those forces is between Bryansk, Orel, and Kaluga, plus there might be a counterattack in the south between Bryansk, Kursk, and Orel. You should expect much resistance in the air. There will be fighters, there will be bombers, and as soon as you can, take the airfield in the middle of the map, right next to Kiev, because your fighters have a pretty limited radius, and this is the airfield best suited for reaching as far into the map as possible. Another tip is that you shouldn't focus too much on the static units in the entrenchments surrounding Bryansk and Vyazma. As I have said, they're static. They will not move once you have taken the city, so you can just leave them in their place. They will not advance anywhere, just bypass them. So the most difficult part of this mission is in the last 5 objectives: Kaluga, Maloroslavets, Mozhaisk, Volokolamsk, and Kalinin. This part of the scenario is really hard. You shouldn't rush it, because if you follow my tips, especially concerning the static troops, you will have more than plenty of time to take these objectives. Do take your time. Please don't even think of trying to go to Moscow, because it's not intended as a main objective. It's only 200 prestige, and it's incredibly well defended. Wait for the next mission. So, let's end this with a little summary of the 3 tracks and compare them to each other. I think it's obvious to you that if you're looking for an easier time, you should go south. Once you're familiar with the nesting formation and how to use it, these missions aren't terrible. So, if you're looking for something simpler, or just for that spirit of blitzkrieg and tank warfare, take south. If you're looking for a bit of a challenge, north, because Barbarossa North is definitely the most difficult of the Barbarossa missions. Leningrad is a really interesting mission and maybe somewhat complicated. And at the gates of Moscow is just a huge map that you have to cover, and it's by definition is not easy. Center is appropriately in the middle. It starts easy and progresses towards hard. You can see the same arrangement in the matter of prestige you can get in the 3 tracks. Playing on general, I have been able to get about 4,000 prestige on the southern track, around 7,500 prestige on the center track, and almost 9,000 prestige on the northern track. And it's important because you'll have to spend prestige if you want to proceed to the winning the war part of the campaign. You'll have to spend prestige in Moscow and Stalingrad later. So if you want to do that, you'll have to accumulate prestige, and maybe north or center is preferable to south. And here's a little joke to end the day. What did rocket artillery explain to 105mm guns? How it's attacking with all the holes in the back. Night!